Jack's wanting my deer.
And once I made the freezer, that little one I shot.
There was 7 out here this morning. Anyhow, we're gonna look at Genesis chapter 9. We're gonna start in verse 20. Something I just soon not talk about, but it happened, and God doesn't hide the ugly parts, so. Let's start with prayer first. Father, it's good to get together to be able to study your word, and Father, we just ask that you open our minds and our hearts to hear from you, and help us to discuss these verses that are hard. Father, just help us to have an open mind and try to understand what's going on. Thank you for these that are here. Bless them and their family. Now I ask in Christ's name. Amen. Okay. We're going to start in verse 20 of chapter 9. Now Noah began to be a husbandman, which means he cultivated the ground, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and was drunken, and was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brothers. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid upon their shoulders, and went backwards and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backwards, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah woke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done, and said, Cursed be Canaan, as servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. And he said, Blessed be the God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. We'll stop there and then finish up the last 2 verses later about Noah. So, who was Ham's youngest son?
I'm assuming Canaan.
I'm sorry?
Or Canaan?
Who was, it says...
Oh, Noah's youngest son?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Noah's youngest son. Yeah, I said that wrong. Who was Noah's youngest son?
Well, it had to be Japheth or Shem.
It really doesn't say, but when it lists them, it's always Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So, the way they're listed, it sounds like Japheth. But he cursed Canaan. So what's the deal? A lot of times in this time period, they refer to a grandson as a son. So Canaan could be his youngest grandson. And he's the one that is cursed. But there's controversy, but whether it was Ham that committed this act or if it was Canaan. And I really can't say. It seemed like it was Canaan, but he's the one that's cursed. Anyhow, it says that Noah knew what his youngest son had done to him, and it's long been accepted as it was a homosexual act committed on him. So that's the thing.
Yeah, the curse, it's there's scripture which I didn't study that, but that curse can go from maybe the patriarch all the way through on cursing through the family line. I don't know if that has anything to do with that.
And that is what happened, because as we know, the Canaanites have been gone for thousands of years. So.
And isn't there something too about, like, if Noah would have cursed his son, then that would have come back on him, reflected on him. So he cursed Canaan, so it would reflect on Ham, or something like that.
That's one of the things. And then other commentaries said he cursed the culprit, the one that committed it. So we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, when I read it, again, I've read it before, I just assumed that it was Ham was the youngest son, but now that you're enlightening me, can be confusing, or not,
It can be.
or not straightforward. But I find that all interesting about the homosexual act. I can't read it any other way. But it's also incestuous, which is really taboo even in today's society. I mean, when I think of crimes that I prosecute, it's like, that's just like, dude, and usually it's the older person on the younger person. But in this case, apparently it's a younger person on their father, which is really, but,
I don't know, I'm on the fence on that, whether that was a homosexual act. I kind of read, and I think there's other commentaries that give it a little bit different.
that's interesting you say, because here's what my commentary says. It says, and which I find interesting, but it said, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it says, while many explanations have been suggested for the phrase, it is best to take it to mean merely what it says. There is no indication of any gross violation, and that's the nakedness. It's all the nakedness of his father phrase.
And he's just being he's dishonored his father by saying his nakedness. I think there's maybe another, I'm on the fence, I don't know for
It
sure.
seems like-
I think it could be either way, but.
It seems like pretty serious, or the repercussions were pretty heavy. And I'm like Jerry, it's like, well, why is it here? Because it's obviously I guess you can see the curse of the Canaanites, right, from here on.
And there's a little, I kind of saw reference like.
The women are talking too much about this. That's what we should.
It's
I
like,
think they're a little uncomfortable.
like there's a reference that I looked, and it's not in this Bible here, but it pointed to the sexual sins, and they were talking about the nakedness of a woman being raped, but it's kind of more of a forceful type nakedness compared to, we really, this kind of leaves it kind of gray here, don't you think?
Well,
It's,
something happened.
Yeah.
The
Something inappropriate.
ESV says, when Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Curse the king." So something happened.
It talks a lot about Noah's drunkenness, which seems to give him some responsibility in this situation. Tries to. I don't know that's kind of hard to wrap your head around too. His drunkenness apparently added to it, or he wouldn't have been naked, or he wouldn't have let whatever happened happen. That to me was like, it's kind of Noah's fault too, because he shouldn't have been drunk. But that doesn't.
well, and there is some response, because it's a tent, is the door open to the tent?
I don't know, Jack. I don't know where you're going with that.
They didn't have zippers yet. I don't know. Speaking personally, every really stupid thing that I have done, alcohol is involved in. I've never been a leader, and I've always been easily duped into following. I've kind of grown past that now.
Well, good.
Well, I told somebody the other day, I don't smoke, I don't chew, and I don't go with the girls that do. because Marshall won't let me. What about all the stuff that the cults and what have you? I was saying, that's why we've got black people, and this is why we've got Indians, the people of color. How'd they get that?
I don't know, but we do know that something physically happened to Noah, because had they just saw his nakedness, he would never know. So something happened, and like I said, I've read more than one commentary that says that the old rabbis and everything agreed that it was a homosexual act. So whatever it was severe. The curse was severe on Canaan. And one other thing that we know is whose descendants lived in Sodom and Gomorrah.
The Canaanites, I guess.
Yep, Canaan's descendants. And we know what the problem was, and God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah for their homosexual lifestyle. So, you know, it kind of points that way, but I can't make a firm conclusion myself. Anything else about that sad commentary on this?
And they spent a lot of time on this ark. I mean, it had been very long after the ark that this happened. I mean, you're talking about maybe a second generation.
There was 8 went on, so Canaan was born after that. So how old was he? We don't know. Anything else?
Well, it's interesting, it comes right after the rainbow, which is all, everybody gets, you know, gives you a good feeling, then,
Yeah.
oh, this is not good. This is not.
And I didn't know you finished the first part of this, because I think of that rainbow, how it has been used for sexual perversion now.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was brought up during your study, but every time I think of that rainbow and I'm looking at
Makes you mad.
gay pride, well, not
Yeah.
make me mad, it irritates me.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
You know, this has nothing to do with all the Latter-day Saints claim that Jesus appeared to the Indians.
Is that right?
And told them who he was and what he'd done, and they rejected it, so he cursed them and threw them the law bread. That's part of their teaching.
Getting back, I don't know how.
I can't see Jesus cursing anybody. I mean, a fig tree maybe. I did a lot of study in that because she has relatives. And they tried for all these years to convert me, and I tried to convert them all these years. And we all failed.
Yeah, I was thinking of Ham too, and I think there have been commentaries that say, like I said, I haven't looked at this for a while, but the Japhethites kind of went north, like maybe Russia and those areas after the ark. The Hamites went south, maybe into Africa, and so it's maybe they're trying to say that some of the Hamites might be some of these Africans that became slaves. There's some different
Yeah,
viewpoints.
I've heard that.
I'm on the fence on that too.
Yeah.
Not how much you can enlighten me more on that.
Not so much. I have heard that it taught that part of the curse was on the black man and white was slave. But I don't see that at all. I don't think God played.
Speculation on somebody's part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think God played
It's
that kind of game. But Canaan is the one that populated the promised land, the land of Canaan. But the Hamites did go south and some more west through Egypt into northern Africa. Okay, Kelly was talking about Noah. It's interesting that Noah isn't mentioned again in Genesis after this. You know, he did, I think, have some shame to go along with this. And this is the first time that being drunk on alcohol is mentioned that I know of. And like you said, it happened right after the coming of the rainbow, or shortly after, seems like anyhow. Okay, well, the last two verses, Noah lived after the flood 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. And that's the last mention of him until, and I can't remember whether it was in some of the Judges or what it was in. But anyhow, that pretty well finishes up chapter 9. And chapter 10, now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Maddah, and Javan, Tubal, Meshech, Tyrus, and the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphath, and Togarmah, I always say that wrong. The sons of Javan, Elishah, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dedan. By these were the isles of the Gentiles, divided in their lands, every one according to his tongue and after the families of their nation. You recognize some of these names. Jack mentioned it a little bit. Do you know where all these places and people settled? Well, that's why I brought the map down. Magog, we believe, has to do with Russia. Togarmah, I always say that wrong every time, is modern day Turkey. So Japheth, and Japheth is, they believe, where the Caucasian race come from. And he left here and went through Turkey up into Europe. They say all the way to Spain, but I can't get him there quite. But then in north of the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, and then all the way through Russia is what they believe that Japheth, where he spread to. But that took some years to get all that settled. I didn't understand by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided. Somebody enlighten me on that. Did your commentary say anything about that, Kelly?
Which verse is it?
5.
No, that usually means they don't know either.
Yeah, that's, mine doesn't have it, and nobody mentioned that I read.
My Christian Standard Bible kind of says coast and islands instead of,
Says what?
you said isles, mine says coast and island. It's a
Coast and Islands.
Christian Standard Bible, so a little bit.
Okay. Anyhow, we recognize some of these names, and as we go on, we begin to get more names that we recognize until we get to Abram's family. Anything about Japheth? let's see.
I think it's interesting, which I don't want to take you down a rabbit hole, but think about Gog and Magog, that's some end time
Yep,
nations that are gonna come down and try to take over Israel. They're not gonna have much luck, but I think
you're
it's
right.
interesting.
What I found interesting is all of that area was considered barbarians. They were really barbaric people and didn't live a very civilized life for years. And, but they did get their act together and later on in history, they even defeated the Romans. They called them the Gauls then. And, but anyhow, they were really barbaric people.
And I think it was barbaric enough, and I think I've stated this before, that the wall of China was put there to try to keep them from, I mean,
You've heard that?
Well, I think, it may be
You're
historical,
right.
yeah, but, yeah, that shows how bad they were.
Yeah.
This kind of relates back to 9 too, I think, but 10, I'm with you on the listing of the names. I mean, in 9, 18, it lists them Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and then in 10:1 it says Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But then when it goes into descendants, it lists them Japheth, Ham, and Shem. So,
It went from youngest to, it seemed like.
yeah, well, yeah, I just saw this, that 10:21 calls Japheth the elder son.
Oh, I thought it
That's
was,
what it says in mine. It says, as the least involved in the biblical narrative and perhaps also as the oldest of Noah's sons,
Japheth.
Japheth.
And 21 says, 10:21 says, unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Heber, the brother of Japheth, the elder.
yeah,
Even to him were children born. So,
it's confusing.
it can be, and that gets you back to the, who was Ham the youngest and his son was cursed? And like you said, you can go around in circles, I think.
Yeah,
But commonly you think of it as being listed the oldest first, just out of respect, right?
mm-hmm,
I mean, we even do that today in,
yeah,
death notices or whatever. Seems like, just out of, well, chronologically, I suppose.
okay. I think it's a pretty sure thing where Japheth ended up going west and north. And I got to looking at the map today, how close Ukraine is, and Russia trying to take that area over, and how close all that'll be to Israel. And it's coming. Okay, the sons of Ham, and the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan, and the sons of Canaan, Seba, Havilah. It talks about the land of Havilah later, and we pretty well know where that's at. And Sabta, and Ramah, and I've got marked up my Bible, Sapta, and the sons of Ramah, Sheba, Dedan, and Cush begat Nimrod. Anybody know who Nimrod is? And he began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter. Don't like what my translation says, but it's what it says. It says, before the Lord, he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it was said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of the kingdom, he started a kingdom. And anyhow, Nimrod was a ruthless person. We'll talk about him more. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in all the land of Shinar. Out of the land went forth Asher to build Nineveh, the city of Rehoboth, and Calah, and risen between Nineveh and Calah. The same was a great city. And Mizraim begot Ladim, and Ananiam, and Lahabim. I should have asked someone else to read this.
A lot of him,
Yeah. And
being,
Naphthaim, and Parthusim, and Casluhim, out of whom was the Philistine. Anyhow, there's a lot of them. And Canaan beget Sidon, firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites, and the Amorites, and the Girgashites, and the Hivites, and the Archites, and the Sinites, and the Advadites, and the Zemarites, and the Hamathites, and afterwards were the family of the Canaanites spread abroad. And the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon, as thou comest to Gerar, and to Gaza, as thou goest to Sodom and Gomorrah, and Ammon, and Zeboim, even unto Lasha. There are the sons of Ham, after his family, after their tongue, and their countries, and in their nation. A lot of funny names in here, but you recognize some of them, like Cush and Nimrod, Havilah. But somebody tell me who Nimrod was and what he done. Verse 10 said that he, in the beginning of his kingdom, so he started a kingdom.
I remember talking about him, studying about him, but I don't know what the occasion was.
Anybody else?
The only thing I remember was when I was in Bible school, they had some archaeologist somewhere discovered some art that was supposed to be Nimrod, and he looked like Santa Claus. I got that stuck with him, nothing else did.
Well, my Bible says possibly the Hebrew name of Sargon the first, an early ruler of Akkad, A-K-K-A-D.
Okay, Nimrod is responsible for building the Tower of Babel. He's the one that started all that. And if you, like I said, I don't like, everybody thinks he was a great hunter, like he killed animals and stuff. But I think if you study that and everything, he was a hunter of men. He was looking for men to support him in his kingdom. And
So he enslaved people?
that, but he, like it said, some of them went out and built these cities. He was looking for people. He was against God. And his name means we will rebel. And he did. He rebelled against God. And that's, God told him to scatter, and he wanted everybody to stay together and build these cities, which are all in, I can't remember, was Nineveh in Iran? Does anybody's footnote say? I think they were all in a local area and somewhat local, and up and down the Euphrates River. Of course, Babel, which is Babylon, Shinar, that's on the Euphrates River, where Abram come from, his family. But Nimrod was the first king And like I said, he was ruthless. He killed some of his own family. If you go outside of biblical history and read secular history. And he was just against God, and everything about the Tower of Babel is evil. Satan supported it. Satan supported all of it, and the archaeology has uncovered at the top of the Tower of Babel are the 12 signs of the zodiac. Every false religion started at the Tower of Babel. Every false religion that ever has been or ever will be comes from the Tower of Babel and from something that Nimrod through. I assume you would call him a Satan worshiper. He was backed and spurred on by Satan in everything he done. And you go way outside of biblical history, he had a wife named Semiramis, and Nimrod died, either that or she killed him. And after his death, she made herself a goddess. And again, it's Satan promoting all this, but she said that she had a son who had no earthly father, that his father was a god or God. So there's a parallel to Mary giving birth to Christ. So it's all Satan.
So just like the word says, Satan's the author of confusion.
Yep. What's Babel mean? Confusion.
Well, and then I guess that's where we get he's a real Nimrod, right?
Yep,
Like that's not a, a term of endearment.
probably not.
What a Nimrod.
Oh.
And I was listening to this guy that day kind of talking about how these gods started, I don't know if he mentioned Nimrod, but they just they're the same evil idol, they transition just different names like Isis, Ishtar, I don't know what all of the demon, it's normally the female fertility god. They don't really, it's the same demon possessed, but the names of the gods have just transitioned through the years to different names, which I thought was kind of interesting to
Yeah.
put it that way.
Speaking of names, it's an act of cruelty to name your child after the Old Testament characters.
Is it?
I had a friend named Azariah. That didn't go over well in high school at all.
Probably not. And again, the Hamites, and there's a difference between Canaanites and Hamites. Canaanites stayed in this area, which includes all of Israel, but then some of Ham's direct descendants went this way, and maybe even south to Ethiopia. And so we haven't talked about Shem yet. He settled in a different place than I thought he did. Anything else though about Nimrod and Ham's descendants?
I think if you just read 9, you get a positive impression of Nimrod.
Yeah.
Or you could,
Yeah,
just from
you
reading
could.
that verse.
Yeah,
And when it said, like you said, when it says a mighty hunter before the Lord, it was like he was sticking it to him, or thought he was. I mean, obviously we know how that turned out for him, but it sounds like, he was if you just read that one verse, you would think he was something else, I guess. But he was something else, I suppose, in a bad way.
and usually mighty one from verse 8 is referring to a warrior, and he was a warrior and a killer. And, but verse 9 should really read, he was a mighty hunter against God. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, a mighty hunter against God. Anyhow, that's kind of hard to get out. But I think from everything that happened at the Tower of Babel and Babylon, turn up to Revelation chapter 17. We'll read verses 4 and 5. Everybody got it? Nope.
Pages are through 10.
Revelation 17, verse 4 and 5. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearl, having a gold cup in her hand, full of abomination and filthiness of her fornication. And this isn't physical fornication, but spiritual fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abomination of the earth. That pretty well expresses what went on and is going to go on again in the end times. So, chapter 18 in Revelation mentions Babylon again. We won't read all of it, but who was trying to rebuild Babylon?
Hussein?
Yep. Did you know they kept him in Illinois till they put him to death?
No.
They did. They kept him in a prison in Illinois. If I heard correctly, anyhow. But Babylon's still not out of the picture. It's not none of it is good. It's all backed by Satan. Nothing else. We'll go on with Shem. Verse 21. Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder, even him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram, and the children of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. And Arphaxad begat Selah, Selah begat Eber. To Eber were born two sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. And Joktan begat Almadad, and Sheleph, and that's a good one, Azarmaveth, and Jerah, and Hadoram, Nazel, and Diklah, and Obal, and Bimel, and Sheba, and Ophar, something like that, and Havilah, there's Havilah again, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. And their dwelling was from Mesha as you go to Saphar, the mount of the east. These are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongue, in the lands, after their nation. These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations, and their nations, and by their nations divided in the earth after the flood. Okay, where did Shem settle?
Well, I didn't know, I've got a new Bible, I just saw this map, it looks like in the Saudi Arabia area, just looking at my map.
Well,
If that's Saudi Arabia here,
where's the Persian Gulf? Is it on there?
it would be here.
Yeah, that, the way I understand, the first settlement was north of the Persian Gulf. Where is it? In what would be modern day Iran, but I think they did go on down into Saudi Arabia, but they also went east. But like I said, it was years before they went east. Anyhow, what else you know about Shem?
Where the Israelites, well, maybe jumping ahead, that's where the Israelite nation come, that's where God the Son came from a gene pool standpoint.
Abraham come directly, pretty directly from Shem. The major role that Shem played was the spiritual line. And of course, that's where Abraham, the beginning of the Jews, come from. They actually, I think, best I can tell, are responsible for the inhabitants of the Orient. They actually later went east at least as far east of the Ganges River in India, which is eastern part of India, probably into China. But that was way, way later than this.
You think the Chinese are descendants of Shem? Yeah, I never.
Eventually, yep. And I don't think I was ever taught this in school, you know, how early did England and that area, how early did they have gunpowder and guns and stuff?
Came from the Chinese, didn't
Chinese invented gunpowder in the 800s, like around before 1850. There's a painting dated 1157, I think, with a cannon even in it. So they were far advanced, much farther than I ever thought. They had the silk, you know, they traveled all the way from Israel all the way to China to get silk and stuff and bring back, and all the spices. They were advanced in mathematics and all kinds of stuff, more so than the Middle East was. What else about Shem? He's the spiritual line, and you'll soon see in chapter 11, well, not soon, but anyhow, he is Abraham's his descendants. What else? Anything else? There's one more little interesting thing outside of biblical history, secular history. Probably from Shem. Mongolia is south of China. No, right here, Mongolia. Probably through Russia, back in here, Russia, frozen land bridge, ice bridge, and they were probably the first people to settle the Americas, South and North America.
You think that Noah's directing where they go, or are they just choosing where to go away from where everybody else is going, or, I mean, or is the Holy Spirit sending that direction, or?
I think it's God directing them the way, when we get to the Tower of Babel and God scattering the people, I think He sent them the way He wanted them to go. But Incas and American Indians and everything most likely are descendants of Mongolian.
They would have had to go in the direction of the other people that had the language that they got when they were all messed up, so they probably didn't go together,
No,
because you know how us humans are, we think we're the only ones, you know.
right. And, you know, we always think Columbus discovered America, and he got credit for it anyhow.
I have a friend that's a Lakota Indian, and he has a tendency of posting things on the internet. And for Columbus Day, he said, now, it may be Columbus Day to you, but that doesn't mean you can come in from everywhere and take everything that's here. He's a little arbitrary about that.
Okay, we've covered a lot of people going a lot of different ways. And the Tower of Babel, we're going to get into the scattering in chapter 11 in the first 9 verses. I don't think of anything else to mention about Shem. But remember, he was the spiritual line, and Japheth, I did forget to hit that. It said Japheth would live under his tent, which meant God would bless Japheth along with Shem. And so they were, Japheth's line was blessed. And if you remember, true religion did not go east, it went west from Israel eventually, and went west into the area that Japheth settled or lived in. Anything else? Need to be some more questions or comments? Jack will answer the questions. Okay, chapter 11, talking about the Tower of Babel. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar. That's, plain is on the Euphrates River, Babylon, present day Baghdad. Actually, Babylon was, the ruins of the Tower of Babel was just south of Baghdad. And they said one to another, go to or come now, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and slime had for their mortar. And they said, come now, let us build a city and a tower, whose top may reach to heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. So they're gonna build a tower that reaches plumb up into heaven. That's what it sounds like, but that's not really what happened or what they're thinking. Verse 5, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they began to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Come now, let us go down. Come now and let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off the building of the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did confound their language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad on the face of the earth. So how do you think he confused their language? How do you think it happened? And why did it happen?
I think it happened because Satan was in the middle of it, the mix of it. They obviously weren't, with building this tower, they were not doing this to worship the one true God. They were worshiping, as you said, the beginning of idolatry and man-made religion.
Yep.
But let's make a name for ourselves.
Yep.
That's it.
Always just thought
He's the designer.
he thought it,
He designed
and it happened.
the
Like if
houses.
he wanted us all, he could say, okay, I don't want these people to understand each other anymore, and then we wouldn't understand each
He
other.
is the one designed the brain, he should probably just pretty easy for him to change that around.
What did we, is that why we have these languages that we have now? Did God give us English? What's the Muslims, what is it, not Syriac, what is it? What they speak, I mean, it's.
I knew it until you asked.
So why did he do it? Why did God confound their language, confuse their language?
Always thought this was to stop what they were doing.
It's because God told them to go and populate the whole earth, not stay around the Tower of Babel. He said, go into all the earth. And they were staying in one place. And it's happening again today, if you think about it. What kept people in the early days from traveling? They couldn't communicate with the people. They didn't know the language. You know, some places was hostile. They didn't know the language, how to communicate with anybody. And they all could communicate, so they were all doing the same thing in the same area. And today the language barrier is being broken. And, you know, they're trying to come to a one world government, one world religion, and everything the same again.
What do you think, is there any commentaries, what language was this that everybody spoke?
I don't know.
I thought well, you're the teacher, I thought I'd ask you.
It was English. It's just like me, they were hillbillies.
Yeah, we would think that as Americans.
Yeah, we would. You know, and you go to the rest of the world, they all want to speak English. All the young people speak English now. When we were in Germany, we stayed in a place, they had to go get their, was it their grandson or granddaughter to talk to us because they spoke German. They could speak a little broken English, but they had to go get their grandson to communicate with us. And of course, Israel, the second language is English. It's like that everywhere.
Is that because people are envious of our culture, I guess, or
They
because
hate,
we have so much influence on it?
they hate us, but they all want to live here, but want to be like us.
Because they envy us too.
Yep.
At least our, Nike shoes and NBA basketball
Yep.
and worldly things, right?
And I think, of course, I didn't tell all of you, but when I come back from Turkey, they're taught from a young age to hate. We're whoremongers and all the different things that they call us, and they are taught to hate us until Americans started going to Turkey and showing that we loved them. And I remember one of the young girls, almost said her name. I can't remember. Anyhow, she asked the question, why is America blessed so much and why does God treat us so bad? And that's true because in this area that we're in was the 7 churches, and Peter's Village was real close to the 7 churches, and they are treated bad because they turned their back on God. How many years ago? Over 2,000 years ago. Paul told Timothy, all the churches in Asia has turned against me. And that's who he's talking about, are the 7 churches. So anyhow, today the language barrier is being broken and we're all trying to do the same thing, and just like they were, this is how many years ago? 4,000? No.
There's actually a translation, the Google thing has a translation thing, and Marcia was watching, she watches something on YouTube that's like a Vietnamese soap opera.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And Google translates it.
Yeah, it'll translate it into English. Some of it sounds pretty darn funny, but yeah. We, when we were newlyweds, it was the worst fight we ever had. This was back before I used to imbibe. I'd come home from work and she'd be watching soap opera. And there'd be dirty dishes, Mom, and I was all over the house.
Marcia's here.
I said if she was here, but I got so mad.
No, that'll get
We
your
had
ears
a
boxed.
little portable TV lived in the upstairs apartment, and I unplugged that and threw it down
That's
the
what
stairs. I didn't sleep in the same bed for a long time.
Probably not.
So I guess what I'm deducing from what you said is that this wasn't so much punishment that he changed their language as to carry out his purpose of populating the world
Yeah,
or the earth, as we know.
yeah.
Because they had tended to congregate because, for whatever reason, I guess, as we do today, people congregate in big cities and.
Yep.
So this was to carry out his plan, I
The
guess, or
overall
his,
plan.
Yeah.
to populate the world, which they weren't doing because they were staying in that one place and then building towers to themselves or the
Making a name for themselves.
idols or gods or whatever.
Yep,
With the idea, I guess, that people would come see it, right? I guess, you know?
I guess.
Like people flock to the Eiffel Tower or the Leaning Tower of Pisa or, that's interesting.
Verse 4 says, let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth. So it's just the opposite of what God had told them to do. There, I've got a date written in my Bible. This is 2,400 years before Christ. Yeah, so it has been 4,000 years. Anything else about Shem's, or not Shem's descendants, the Tower of Babel, what's going on with it? And I found it interesting. God says, let us go down. So, you know, God is a plurality. Always has been from the start. Three persons in one. Okay, Babel means confusion. He confused their language, and you know, when we choose teams, we line up and count off. You know, how did God decide who was going to speak what? You know, how did they figure out, well, this group speaks my language, I'm going to go over there. But that's something like that's the way they settled. Seemed like to me anyhow.
Yeah, but footnote says Babel sounds like Hebrew for confused.
Does it?
But do you think that if he said, Kelly, you're gonna speak this, Carrie, you're speaking this, Mercedes, and then it comes to Jack, and you sound like Kelly, and Bernie, you sound like me, and you sound, I mean, do you think that God led them to each other? I mean, as far as where they should go?
You would, something like that had to happen.
Yeah.
You know, that the groups got together.
Somebody was hollering, what the heck's going on?
And it was God carrying out his plan, so he
So
has
he
to
made
be.
them, and each one of them understand the one they were going.
And they already had a plan for Abraham, as you say, because we know where the promised land is. Where did he end up?
Mhm.
God said he'd make you a multitude of people as numerous as the stars. And I think all that's been fulfilled yet, that that's the purpose why Abraham was in the land of Shinar. And I kind of thought about that. You said east, they were, it's not where God dealt with the believer even in Abraham's time of faith. He went west. He didn't go east, he went west. Like you said, everything started from,
It all goes that way.
I never thought about that.
Okay, all the Bible is important, but I think we're going to skip 10 through 26 because it just tells how long everybody lived. And I never thought about it until today. We know from the time that Adam was created, it was 1,656 years to the flood. You could date it by each person's life, how long they lived until they got a certain child. And I wrote here, on verse 10, it says, these are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. So they was in the ark for 1 year, and this is 2 years later, so it's 1659 years from time Adam started. And you can go through each one of these and figure the time until Nahor, which was Terah's father, until the time of Abraham leaving the Ur of the Chaldees and going to Iran. Okay, we are going to pick up in verse 22. And Serg lived 30 years and begot Nahor, and Serg lived after he begot Nahor 200 years and begot sons and daughters. And Nahor lived 29 years and begot Terah. And Nahor lived after he begot Terah 119 years and begot sons and daughters. And Terah lived 70 years and begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So there's the lineage of Abraham at the, before the Jews began, before God called Abraham the Jews. Abraham wasn't a Jew, he lived in Assyria. And Ur of the Chaldees is in the Babylon area. I can't remember. Anybody know exactly where Ur was? I think it was in the Euphrates Valley. Anyhow, he come from that area. Anything about Abraham's forefathers?
And this, I don't want to take you down a rabbit hole too, but we're noticing, and you probably did talk about this, we should have made some of these other studies, but these people aren't living as long after they jumped off that ark. And I think the reason there's a canopy above, that there's a big change in everything from the weather patterns and the atmosphere that's not as healthy as it is.
That's true.
And the animals turned on too. So I don't know how prevalent the animals were killing people, but of course, yeah, all that.
Back in verse 10, Arphaxad, let's see, he lived 500 years. So they, a lot of people believe that the 120 years that's talked about before the flood was man's lifespan. But I don't think it was. I think it was 120 years until the flood. And so.
I mean, how could they say that? Because Methuselah was 960 and no, it's
969.
Yeah. You know, they're totally off on that, I believe.
But they're, you know, this is going downhill.
Yeah.
Man isn't living as long. Until Abram got to Haran. He has a brother named Haran, but there's also a city named Haran in Syria. That was about 400 years after the flood and 200 years after the Tower of Babel. Is the time frame. I'll try to figure that out before next Bible study and see how all these dates and ages figure
And
in.
just a few verses in the Bible.
And yes,
You're saying 400 years after the flood of Abraham? You're probably right, but I thought it'd be more time than that between the
it's
flood and
yeah.
Abraham.
It's about 400 years. And, you know, think about the population. But think how quick America populated. In 1776, there were something over 2 million people in America. And today there's over 300 million.
Yeah, and that's just 250 years.
Yep. So, and these people are living longer than we are, or that, you know, they live longer, and they get into multiple wives, so they were populating quicker than what we populate in America.
And when they're given their lineage, it doesn't mention all their kids by any stretch
By
of
any
the
means.
Yeah, just, I guess, I don't know how they decide which ones to mention, but I guess they have some importance, I suppose, or to the narrative.
Well, we don't see everything in the Bible. I mean, you know, how did Adam and Eve, they don't even talk about
Right,
how
we
many
just skipped,
kids and all
we
that.
just skipped 400 years there in chapter 11.
Yes.
Yeah, where'd Adam and Eve live? You know, did they have a house? Did they lay down in a field, or where'd they live? You know, there's so many questions that we just have to wait. We'll figure it out someday. Okay, we'll go ahead.
Well, it's pretty warm when they originally were in the Garden of Eden. They didn't wear clothes, so you know, it's pretty comfortable.
That,
I'm sorry, Chair.
we talked about, you know, there was a constant, it was a greenhouse effect. And it wasn't just the Garden of Eden, it was all earth. And fossils bear that out, the giant plants and the animals and stuff. Stuff didn't quit growing. Okay, we'll go ahead and finish chapter 11. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, Haran. Haran begat Lot. Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nation, or nativity, which is the land he was born, in Ur of the Chaldees. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, I think is the way you pronounce it before it's changed to Sarah. And the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. And Sarai was barren, she had no children. And Terah took Abram his son and Lot, the son of Haran, his son-in-law, basically. That's not right. What is it, Kelly? Nephew, right. And Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram. Siri wants to talk to me about something. Let's see. And Sarai was barren, had no children, and Terah took Abram his son, Lot, the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. And they came unto Haran and dwelt there. And the days of Terah was 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. So God calls Abram to leave in the next chapter and leave his land and his father's house. So why did they go to Haran, which is in northern Syria. Why didn't they go to the land of Canaan?
Guess it wasn't time yet, I don't know.
But I think he just said Abram, he wanted Abraham, or Abram to go,
Right.
not his father.
Yep. His father wasn't supposed to go to Canaan. It was Abram. So it took, the thought or the belief is that Abram was around 50 years old when he left Ur of Chaldees and went to Haran. And then Terah died 25 years later. And when Abram went into Canaan, he was around 75 years old, and then he was 100 when he had Isaac. So, what did God see in Abram that he didn't see in anybody else?
Well, I don't know, I'm sure he saw it at the time, but maybe it happened later on that he has faith in the one God of three persons. You know that happens. Is that what you're talking about? Or is there,
Well,
I mean, that's a latter event, but was it already in him that he saw that?
I don't know. That was a question that I asked. But, I don't know. He had to see something there. But they didn't come from a spiritual background. In Joshua 24:2, and Joshua called for all Israel, for the elders and for the heads and their judges, officers, and said unto them, that's wrong, that's chapter 23. Anyhow, they came from an idolatry background. Verse 2 says, Abram and the father of Nahor, and they served other gods. They were idol worshippers, they were pagans. So what did God see? There had to be something different about Abraham that only God knew. But he called Abram out, and he changed his name to Abraham.
Well, he knows what our gifts are sitting around his table, because he
Yeah.
made us, so.
Right.
If he had a task that he wanted done, and he knew Jack was the best person to do it, then, then he's gonna put Jack up to it, I guess.
Yeah. I can't see anything different in Abraham. I guess is the problem. God can, but I can't see Jack gifts and things that God's blessed him with.
Especially out of these very few verses where we know him, but
Yeah.
immediately almost depicts him as the father of Israel, basically.
And obviously, he wasn't perfection. He lied in Egypt. He, 2 or 3 really flub ups that he committed.
He was a man like us, just another person.
Not only lied, he made his wife lie too.
And he had a child with his wife's maiden. I'm sure God didn't approve of that. That's why there's such a mess over there right now.
Abraham, not just the father of the Jews, is he? Okay, any questions or comments or anything? We've covered a lot of years and a lot of ground.
I think it shows God's patience, right? He works outside of time because, we think, when I think of this, I think, oh, it happened like this. Well, no. And it's just happened real slowly.
And I pray that for myself. I mean, I thank you, Lord, that you have patience with such a person as I am. You know, I don't know if anybody else think that. Maybe I think too lowly of myself. I don't know.
Like I've said before, I'm my own harshest critic.
I thought Marcia might be.
She might be, if she
Sorry.
watches us on YouTube.
I'm not testing that.
If she watches Vietnamese soap operas on YouTube, she can watch this. You could be in deep trouble.
Who said, who said God's outside of our time or something like that? Which one of you said that? Somebody said something about God's timing.
I think it's Kelly, I think.
I can't get over Isaiah 54, verse 7 and 8. It says, for a small moment, this is God speaking to Israel, for a small moment have I forsaken thee, but with great mercy will I gather thee. In a little wrath I've hid my face from thee for a moment. How long has Israel been out of the graces of God?
Been a long moment, hasn't it?
Ever since Christ was crucified.
To us anyway, it's been a
Yeah.
long moment.
It's gonna be a short time before the remedy happens, it looks like to me.
One thing I do want to stress about the first part of Genesis is chapter 3 of Genesis. I said in Sunday school class last Sunday, if you can understand two chapter 3s in the Bible, you've got a good leg up on the Bible. And that's Genesis 3, what happened in Genesis 3, the fall of man. Why we are sinners. We're not, how do we say that? We don't sin. No, we're not sinners because we sin. We're sinners because we're born sinners. Or we sin because we're sinners.
Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. I don't see anyone that can say
exclude
otherwise.
anybody. But Genesis 3 teaches about the fall of man, and Romans 3 teaches about the justification of man. Okay. We're going to quit 5 minutes early. I'll close us with prayer. Father, it's been so good to be able to sit with your word in the foremost of our thoughts and to think about what's going on in the early times of biblical history and of what you're doing in the world and how you wanted our world populated, how you sent people where you wanted it to be. Thank you for showing us that. Thank you for your word. Just help us to hide your word in our hearts and know that through your word you're present with us. The word, Jesus said, I'm the word, the way, the truth, the life. Father, just help us to be more like Christ.